All right, I can't hear them anymore, so I'm going to assume we're good to go. Okay, so we have 3 hybrid homeschool parents from, I guess, different sectors of hybrid homeschooling, you could say. So first on the panel is Jessalyn Franchimone, and she is a hybrid homeschooling parent, and she's part of a hybrid homeschool that's a charter school. And are we still getting reverberations from the other room? Yeah. Okay, is anyone from tech in here? Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna keep going with the introductions. Can you hear me over them? Yeah. Okay, all right, good. And next on the panel is Kristen Easterling, and she is also at a hybrid homeschool, but a public hybrid homeschool. And then finally we have Sylvia Duarte, also a hybrid homeschooling parent, but part of a private hybrid homeschool. So really excited to have them, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Jessalyn.
Great, thank you very much. I have 3 children who I've been homeschooling through the hybrid homeschooling model through a public charter school for the past 10 years. Prior to marriage and children, I obtained my California teaching credential with the intention of becoming an elementary school teacher. However, during my second student teaching assignment, I became disheartened with the system. I saw that the students in the class, their needs weren't being met by the classroom teacher, nor by the system as a whole. And after I ended up completing the credential program, I just decided that a career in education wasn't going to be a good fit for me. And I moved forward into finance. I worked for Merrill Lynch for a couple of years and then went into mortgage banking for the next 15 years. At that point, my son was a toddler, and I was beginning to think about what schooling options I wanted for him. And that's when the idea of the hybrid homeschooling model came to me. I struggled with the idea of sending my son off to the elementary school down the street. It was a huge school. I didn't feel that his needs were going to be met, that he was going to be nurtured. I felt like he was going to get a cookie-cutter education, and that's really not what I wanted for him. I had toyed with the idea of homeschooling him, but my husband, he's actually the son of a public educator, and he did not like the idea of homeschooling. He feared that my son would be isolated and he wouldn't have adequate social interaction, all those things that we hear. So I began researching options, and I came across Julian Charter School, Phoenix Learning Center, and now it's renamed Julian Charter School Mountain Oaks, but it's in Encinitas, California. It serves children in kindergarten through 8th grades, and it's a 4-day-a-week hybrid homeschooling program where they're on site for 4 days, and then we have Friday as a homeschool day, and then in the winter there's a 1-week-long passion project where the kids get to choose something that they want to research that they're really interested in and passionate about, and they get to do that in the winter. So the mission for the program is to teach the state standards using differentiated curriculum to incorporate GATE standards, such as acceleration, novelty, and depth and complexity, in a nurturing environment that fosters critical thinking, inquiry, and connections to universal concepts. And this is completely what aligned with me and what I wanted for my son. And the bonus was that I got to be active in his education as his teacher on Friday. But however, due to the success of the program, we entered the lottery for entry for kindergarten, and after the lottery, my son was number 23 on the wait list. So we didn't get to enroll in kindergarten. We went to the local public elementary school, and at that point, we waited, and by 1st grade, we were offered a spot at, we call it PLC is what we would call it. Anyway, when we enrolled over there, we started in 1st grade. I noticed that the structure, the flow, the teaching, and the content of JCS was of absolutely no comparison to my local elementary school. They call the students aren't students or kiddos or kids, they're scholars. That's what we call our kids, they're scholars. And they play an active role in their education. In the fall, They set goals for themselves, and they lead scholar-led parent-teacher conferences. So the kids are there, they're involved, and it's an open communication, which is really great. And then in the spring, at the end of the year, the kids present a scholarly presentation where they showcase their work and how they've grown from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And this is something that you don't see in public schools down the street. The scholars learn from an early age the keys to success through their scholarly traits, such as shooting for the stars, sticking to hard tasks, viewing themselves as half full with always room to learn more, looking at problems from multiple perspectives, and saving unfinished work. The teachers at JCS foster a growth mindset. They create tailored lessons and projects that integrate multiple subjects and interesting and fun assignments that foster critical thinking and challenge scholars to dig deep, to make connections to the world around them, and to always shoot for the stars. The Friday homeschool days became days that my son and I began to look forward to. His academy teacher would assign meaningful work, usually with a menu of choices that appealed to different learners and different preferences. We would typically complete the work in the morning, and then we would spend the afternoons together playing, doing field trips, or perhaps doing an activity with the local homeschool community. Since these early days at the academy, my son has moved on to public high school, and my two younger children, my 4th and 7th graders, remain at PLC or Mountain Oaks. Over the years, my family's taken advantage of the Friday homeschool days. We've taken that time to go on family trips. We've done some really neat homeschool experiences. My daughter did farm school, and my sons were able to do the coolest class ever, a Bronze Age sword casting class, which was really neat. Our family did take a break from the brick and mortar model during the 21-22 school year due to COVID situations that I wasn't too pleased with. During that time, we did enroll in the JCS 100% home study program. So at that point, we weren't going on site. Instead, we were supported by a credentialed teacher who was absolutely amazing. And we also received educational units, is what they're called. It's basically tokens or funds that we can use as a parent to enhance our children's learning through enrichment activities and materials. We also had access to the resource center where we could choose curriculum and check out up to 50 different items or curriculum or things that we could use in educating our children. During that year, my kids utilized different hybrid models as well. My daughter attended a micro school in the mornings. My sons they did a couple of virtual classes. They did both recorded and live online classes. And then all 3 of my kids attended a learning center that was in our community where they got to take fun classes like robotics, art, cooking, archery, robotics, all these fun sorts of things. But after that year-long break, my kids and we were really missing our JCS brick and mortar PLC Mountain Oaks community. We missed the strong sense of community and our friends, and so we decided to return back to the program. So that was my son's 8th grade and final year in the program. And during that time, the middle school years at Mountain Oaks, they focus on developing and honing intellectual traits. So my son was, honing his intellectual clarity, courage, humility, leadership, and integrity. And that year, my son, he put in the hard work. It's a rigorous curriculum. He excelled. And his efforts paid off, and at the end of the year, when he finished 8th grade, he decided to enroll in the community college to take a Spanish class where he could get credit, 2 years of high school credit for one semester, or one quick summer class of Spanish. But anyway, he aced that class, and we think that he's confident that his experience through the JCS system is what helped him to be successful in that. Today, my 10th grader is challenging himself with 2 honors classes and 1 AP class at we're at the local public high school right now for high school. And my 7th and 4th graders continued at the Learning Center in Encinitas. And I guess over the last 20 years, I've really come full circle in my belief that public education can be amazing if you put in the time and the effort to find the program that's right for you. Finding Julian Charter Schools was really a blessing for us, and I think that we're really blessed to be able to find these little gems out there in public education. So grateful. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen, and about 8 years ago, none of this was even on my radar. I had some experience as a homeschool student myself, growing up outside of Washington, D.C. I was homeschooled through about 5th grade, and then I went to a private Christian school until graduation. But I always swore I would never homeschool, not because I had a bad experience, but just because I didn't think I had the patience that my mother had, or the organizational skills, or the time management. So it was not on my radar to do this for my children. So about 8 years ago, I was a nurse, and I had transitioned out of the hospital and took what I thought was like my dream job. I got to go to school with my kids and be their school nurse. And so I had five of my children enrolled in the same elementary school. I got to go to work with them, and what parent doesn't enjoy a good snow day where they get to stay home too with their kids? So we had become foster and adoptive parents during that time, and so we have a very unique range of children that God has blessed us with. And at the time, 8 years ago, I had an 8th grader who was a part of the gifted program. She actually wrote and published her first novel that year in 5th grade. And then I had a kindergartner who was really struggling, and he in the middle of that year, about the second time that he was suspended as a 5-year-old, I realized this was not going to work for him. And so I thought maybe this was just going to be a change that we're going to make for him. But as it turned out, it became a change for our entire family that I'm really thankful for. So at that same time, about 7 years ago, 2 gentlemen in our community, we live in a kind of a more rural community outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, and the public school system tasked a gentleman. He was given the principalship of a alternative school, which is where all the kids were sent who couldn't survive public school. And at the same time, he was tasked with the job of innovating a type of hybrid or online school program. So I'm not sure how they thought one man could do this, but he is that type of person that I guess got excited about something new. So he and another gentleman that I knew from our elementary school decided that same year that they were going to start a K through 12 hybrid program through the public school system in our county. And that was the same year that, I was praying for something different for us. So we enrolled my then kindergartner. We just started all over again. We're going to do kindergarten again with this program 7 years ago. And it's currently called the Samuel Everett School of Innovation. It's in Maryville, Tennessee. And they, I think, initially wanted the high school to be more of just an online program, but as it has kind of evolved, it is hybrid in the sense that they attend 1 day a week, and then the other 4 days they're at home. So it still requires quite a bit of parent involvement and time. I'm able to work part-time thanks to some great-grandparents. But I'm still very hands-on for a lot of hours, especially with my younger kids. And so as we started this before COVID, and then my other children decided, we want to stay home too. So I have 6 kids now, and they're all home and a part of this program. Fast forward 8 years, and now I have a graduating senior. That gifted student has really excelled in this environment. And then I have my kindergartner at the time is now in middle school, and he is just thriving. He is able to receive SPED services because this is still considered part of the public school system. So that has been a huge blessing for me. Even though I've taken on the majority of his learning, I still have support from the school and from experts. And now I have a new kindergartner that's starting this year. So I, throughout the last 7 years, because it's just one day a week, it afforded me the opportunity to add some additional enrichment to that, especially during the beginning years. They provide a pretty rich, like English and math learning model for them. They're given a Chromebook to take home. They're given all the materials they need. But there wasn't a lot of like science and history and what I call, some of the fun stuff. So we did a lot of just extra at home. We were a part of like a homeschool co-op, like with traditional homeschool families. Who kind of embraced us, and I learned a lot from them. So I was able to add, art and other things to that because I had them home 4 days a week. But as they've gotten older, in middle school they added like a history teacher and a science teacher through middle school and high school. And then as they move into high school, the model is really set up to provide they really utilize, Tennessee has, through Tennessee Promise, the ability to take like 5 free dual enrollment credits. So the high schoolers use the local colleges and community for some of the advanced classes that they want. There's also about 15 to 20 online AP courses in Tennessee that they have access to. Some of them have AP teachers in the building. That same principal is also the AP calculus teacher in the building and the football coach. And he's converted the basement to a wrestling gym. And so he's just, jack of all trades. But he, I think what's made it so successful is those two particular men that started this, they just believed that kids were capable of anything. So for my son, who was labeled as a problem in elementary school, he was able to walk into that building and be seen and celebrated. And I was told, from a very, very early on, your son is a great kid. He's going to do great things. And I had never heard anyone say that about my kid before. And it's true because he rose to their expectations, and he's never once had one day of problem in that facility. Now at home, we still struggle because I have to be that mean mom that makes him do his schoolwork. But when he goes that is his favorite day of the week to be in that building. And then for my advanced learner, she was able to jump ahead as far as she needed to and take whatever classes. There wasn't anything holding her back. So she was able to, go to local colleges and take things that they couldn't offer in the school. And then all in between, I have, a range of children. They're able to participate in sports programs at the local high schools. So once they get into middle school and high school, they're able to be a part of varsity sports. I think that they would have access to some theater and band type things as well. We haven't really pushed for that. But the sports has been, not contested at all. And then they tried on the elementary school level to provide like art and PE, and because this is public school, they wanted to provide everything that the other public school kids had. But as they found out, parents weren't really willing to drive their kid in an extra day just for an art class. So, but because this is public school and it's free, we're able to spend that extra money for like a guitar lesson or a theater class, and that extra time that we can do that because we have 4 days a week that they're not in school. So it has been a huge blessing to us. I still teach at like a homeschool co-op, and we still do some enrichment. But now that as my older kids have moved forward in school, they're like, Mom, we don't have time for all this extra stuff. We have schoolwork to do. But we are able to kind of pick and choose what is important to them and what they would like to focus on. And then the school still provides all their high school credits that they need to graduate. And that's where it got really tricky through as you get into high school as a homeschool parent. Because I was traditionally homeschooling some of them, but now as they've moved into high school, I've got 3 high schoolers this year. I needed a place that was going to make sure that they had the credits they needed to graduate. And so if we want to take Spanish at a local college or a biology class, we can, but I don't have to find all of those things for all of my students. So we're very, very blessed.
So I'm here as the private school hybrid homeschool parent. And our school is called St. John Bosco Academy, and it began when 2 sisters and 2 friends decided that they wanted to share homeschool responsibilities. So it was you homeschool, I homeschool, you take my kids for a couple days, I'll take your kids, and we can get some stuff done around here. what they really ended up starting was a micro school. In 2009, they decided to formalize this a little bit. They started meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays in the basement of a school. And eventually they started a Monday, Wednesday session as well, because their friends heard about this and they wanted in on this action. So now you've got a Monday, Wednesday session in addition to your Tuesday, Thursday session. The 8th grade parents started to say, okay, it'd be great if we had a high school. So in 2015, we graduated our very first class of 4 kids, which grew to 10, which grew to 13, and now we're at capacity with about 50 kids per graduating class. And essentially this went in 10 years, 10, 15 years, depending on when you want to count the actual school building when that was built. We went from 2 kitchen tables to a $6 million facility on 4 acres that almost 600 kids enjoy today, including my own kids. And there are enough people on that waiting list, and there's enough of an interest to start a whole nother K through 12 school. And I think that the draw to this was twofold. The first was just the unique structure of a hybrid school. So you can still do all of the things that you do as a homeschool parent on those 3 days at home. We can have the field trips. More than anything, I was interested in bonding with the kids. And my own homeschool journey started when my husband and I first got married. We decided we'd go to church for an hour on Sunday. And we met this family that was in front of us. Right, I think you know where this is going, right? So this lady had 5 kids, which to me was like, that's a lot of kids. And I was working as a television news reporter at the time. So I'm 24, I'm working as a TV news reporter, and I felt kind of embarrassed for her, honestly, because it was like this stair-step kids, but you're sitting behind them week after week, and you're looking at them going, oh, they like each other. And they're poking each other, and they're helping each other out if something falls down. And it wasn't that they were well behaved, because these parents had an understanding of child development. They know that a 2-year-old is just going to do what a 2-year-old does, And so it wasn't behavior. It was more like, and I didn't have the words for this as a 24-year-old, but they were securely attached to one another, like they were connected to one another. And I said, I know I want that for my family. So I didn't know their grades, like I didn't know how well they were doing in math, but I was measuring success in a different kind of way. So to get back to how we do things, so that's kind of the focus of parents at our school. They care about this sort of different kind of success. And the way it, practically speaking, works is on the home days, on the days that I'm home with the kids, I download the lesson plans that the teacher has uploaded by Saturday night, so that I have the exact same teacher books. If she teaches on Monday and Wednesday, I use those same books to teach Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, if that makes sense. So it's an independent school. We are actually considered homeschoolers. So the K through 8th program, we register with the state as homeschoolers. There's a declaration of intent to homeschool that you have to sign and submit electronically. Our high school is considered an accredited private school, but they go to school 3 days a week. They're there Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So we had to build an extra building in order to house enough classrooms. I think that building just has 4 classrooms. One of them has like dividing walls, and in order to have enough room for a high school, because there's Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, and then you need, extra time and extra space for kids that are going there 3 days and not just 2. So on the school days, we do the normal things homeschoolers do. We go on field trips. I can go a little bit faster. I can go a little bit slower. There's still a curriculum that I have to follow, so I can't go too fast or too slow, but I can dive a little bit deeper. I can say, oh, you're really interested in Egyptian history. Let's watch a documentary and take out an extra book about that. But if you're having a little bit of a problem in a math concept, then I can spend a little bit more time with you, right? And then of course on the days that they're in school, we maximize the time that they have in a group to do group sort of stuff, right? If you're in kindergarten, you can have show and tell. If you're in high school, there's an in-class debate, et cetera, right? I think though the main draw to our school, so to get to the second draw, is that it's a community crafted place by people that have shared values. So this is a Catholic school, and I think there are a growing number of parents who are realizing that your average Catholic school is sort of philosophically challenged. You have essentially a public school with a religion class stacked on at the end. and it's expensive. And many of us are realizing that we missed out on this sort of magnificent heritage of arts and letters and law and science, and in particular, like a moral and a spiritual heritage too. And we want to be able to pass that down to our kids. So I mean, private schools are still important in the sense that many parents use them as a way to get, like they think that this is how their kids are going to get to a place like this, right? They want their kids to go to like an Ivy League school. But the motto at our school, the unofficial motto at our school, you hear it often enough that I call it the unofficial motto, is that it's heaven, not Harvard. That is kind of, we take, like, St. Peter's not going to ask you for your resume. You know, we take this sort of long view of life, like an eternal view of life, you know, if you want to kind of put it that way. And I think even someone that's not religious can see the meaning behind that, right? We're trying to create kids that have character. I mean, essentially the view of kids, of scholars, right, that drives our school is that the human being is a creature of timeless significance, of infinite dignity and value, unique, unrepeatable. And when you have that view of kids, then something has to be different. So two things are different for us. The first is the teaching. Like, we spend a lot of time on virtue, which is this sort of old, crusty barnacle of a word that nobody uses anymore. But it means nothing more than this firm disposition, this habitual, firm disposition to do good. If anything, we make our kids memorize that. We want nothing more than kids to have the wisdom and the courage to choose the right thing. And this doesn't mean that testing isn't valuable, but tests are just tools. We do look at testing. The kids that took the AP, and it was a double-digit number of kids, right, that took the AP Calculus exam last year, all of them got 4s and 5s. And according to the AP Calculus teacher, you really can't do that unless you have a solid math K through 8th program. And so testing is important. My own son is just finished his freshman year at Georgia Tech and was a straight A student his second semester, you know. But we didn't put the kind of pressure on them that a lot of parents put. I mean, I just heard about a young lady that's a local to us in our school's in Cumming, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes north of Atlanta. And she schedules in crying at 4 o'clock because she's got all of these AP classes in the morning, and then she's got dual enrollment at night, and so she schedules in her emotional breakdown at 4 o'clock. And we were like, we don't want that. I said to my son, just get a 3.4 so that you can keep the scholarship that you have, you know, and he was able to exceed that. And I think that's partly because someone was talking about self-governance earlier. Self-discipline and self-control are so important to us at school because, as all of you would know better than me and know the studies, I think for decades now, self-control and we call it self-mastery, right, in a Catholic school. I am a king or a queen because I rule myself. I'm not a slave to my desires. I'm free, right? And this is the thing that, according to all the studies, tell us that are going to make you the happiest and the most successful in life. So that's kind of like the driver to our school. I think it's something that requires a lot. We're asking a lot of kids and of the parents who are there and of the teachers. I think there's a great quote. Hypocrisy is the occupational hazard of people trying to be good, right? And so it's not a perfect place. I mean, there are plenty of days where I'm just throwing worksheets at my kids. It's like, we got to go. Here's a worksheet. You know, I think you know this already. You know, and then at school, people make mistakes. Like, teenagers are thoughtless, right? But we have this view of just building character. In a past life, I spent a little bit of time as a spokesperson for the National Mentoring Partnership, like unofficial, and Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I found that this, essentially what I've described to you as a classical education, that it sort of eats mentoring partnership or mentoring programs for breakfast, right? If we want to elucidate a vision for the development of a child's character, this seems to be a fantastic way of doing that. You can read the Iliad and the Odyssey all day long and not be getting a classical education. That being said, we do read lots of old books because we think that they're a great way of showing us how to be human, a great way of teaching us wisdom, not wealth, right? How to live, not how to make a living. You can get all A's and still flunk life. That's kind of what drives our school. I mean, it's demanding, but that gets us to the second part of this, which is it's about the atmosphere and the approach to discipline that we take. It's not so much a crimes and fines on the wall kind of place. I've never really heard of anybody getting detention. There are problems, but they're dealt with on a case-by-case basis because we're trying to raise adults. We're not trying to raise kids, right? And the atmosphere is just kind of fun. I'll just read it to you for the sake of time, if I can find it. So we've got, there's always, Catholics, there's a feast day for everything, right? So it's always a party. And we've got, if it's not special food or some sort of theme, it's a dress down day or pig roast, powder puff game, play dates. There's more play dates than I can even wrap my brain around. There are bonfires, field trips, field day, rallies, lots of dances and dancing, swing dance club, hikes, the cupcake rosary. I want the blue one. I want the Our Father. Because it's blue. Senior events for seniors. There's game nights, school spirit at volleyball, basketball, soccer game, father-daughter dance, group of men, which is just a group of young guys that gets together and they do a gospel reflection, a football game, and some food. And it's not mandatory. They just get together because this is something that they want to do. It was their initiative. Some of these are parent-led, some of them are student-led, most of it's student-led, and some of it's school-led also. But so where did we leave off? Mission trips, retreats for high schoolers, retreats that the high schoolers put on for the middle schoolers. There was the inflatable obstacle course for the principal's birthday. That's fresh on my mind because it was last week. There's even teacher babies. Good Latin teachers are hard to come by. So that teacher actually has a crib and a changing table in her classroom. And then the baby just kind of gets passed around. And I know... And the kids love it, and it's helpful for the teacher, and there's probably a safetyist somewhere having a heart attack about all of this, but it's a family atmosphere. Not everyone knows everyone else. People don't all agree on things, but at the end of the day, there are 3 words that drive our school, and it's truth and goodness and beauty. We kind of believe those things are objective. We debate about them sometimes. We see truth as this neutral place where we can all come and put aside subjective, maybe even selfish desires and perspectives in order to find what it is that we share. They talk a lot about unity in education these days, and that's kind of the ultimate in unity as far as I can see it. So, to close, in a world that's so everyone's miserable and depressed and lonely. And we know that, according to the CDC, I want to say that it's 1 in 3 girls, according to the Washington Post, who says that according to the CDC, that there are 1 in 3 girls who have seriously considered suicide in the past, as high school girls. And I don't want to say that I know everything that goes on with everyone at school, but we have this healthy atmosphere going. We have, they're normal, which I know that term even is controversial, but it's just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal. And what we have is just a healthy place for kids to come and learn together and still get good grades and still go to Ivy League schools and great schools, but it's not the main focus. So it's an outpost of sanity.
All right, I want to introduce my co-moderator. He actually coined the term hybrid homeschooling, so I thought it would be impossible to have a hybrid homeschooling panel without Eric Wearne. He's professor at Kennesaw State University. So Eric, why don't you ask the first question?
Okay, thank you. I will do that. So we had a discussion yesterday about whether all these models were kind of being captured by the affluent. And so there's this argument that historically you have choice. If you have a lot of money, you can go wherever you want. Or if you're poor, we target programs at you. But in between, you're kind of out of luck, right? But these hybrid schools seem like an entree into school choice for more middle-class families because they're part-time, the teachers tend to be part-time, the tuitions are much lower. So the 3 of you, you don't have data on this, I'm sure, but can you talk about your sense of that? What is are your schools captured by affluent parents?
Well, I think just to speak to ours specifically, there are other hybrid models within our community that are would be too expensive for our family. So with 6 kids, my husband's a captain with the fire department, and then I cannot work full-time as a nurse currently, so we have very limited funds for extra education. But because this is a public school model, it's completely free. And so they started with about 50 kids pre-COVID, and now obviously things exploded during COVID. They have about 400 students at the school. And ours is a fairly rural, poor community too, so there's definitely affluent families that are a part of it, but it's open and accessible to everybody, which is a huge blessing for us.
I think I actually have the amount of money we charge for tuition. We have a number of families that could probably afford, it's a handful of families that could afford really to go wherever they want. If anything, our school was built on the generosity of a small number of donors and a big fundraising effort also. And it was very gradual. It was this very slow progression so that no one made any sort of big mistakes along the way. It got built slowly, but we have this number of families, and this is good for, I personally having been, I was raised, it was inner city, Bridgeport. Inner city is not a term that's cool to use anymore either, I don't think, but I have immigrant parents, and I remember, it's a good thing for different kinds. Socioeconomic diversity is a good thing. It's good for these groups to get to know one another, and we have a small group of parents that really could afford to send their kids to wherever they want. And then we have a small group of parents that is not that, but the majority of the people really are in between, because our tuition for lower school for 2 days a week it ranges from $2,900 to $3,900 depending on how many kids you have at the school. And then for high school, it's about between 5,000 and 6,000, something like 6,000, because that's a 3-day-a-week program in an accredited school.
Our school is in Encinitas, California, and I don't know if you know where that is, but it's basically right on the coast in Southern California, just north of San Diego. So we are an affluent community where our site is. I think that we have 13% of our students who qualify for free lunches. However, JCS, as a family of school, there are six schools under JCS, and we are just one of those, and they're in different locations, and I believe that they serve all different socioeconomic families. So, I think it really comes down to, in my opinion, parents putting in the effort to look for something different, to see what's out there, because I think that there are choices out there. I do know that we have a larger percent of homeschoolers in California who maybe they don't want to homeschool, but because of our vaccine laws that we have in California, they're forced to homeschool, and a lot of those families look to charter schools to be able to receive some of those, what I was saying, educational units to enhance their children's learning, so that they can go to independent learning centers, so that they conform with the laws. But charter schools are really helpful to everybody.
So a lot of folks will define homeschooling as parent-directed, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about to what extent is hybrid homeschooling, or the type of schooling your children do, to what extent is it parent-directed? It also seems like there's some co-teaching and coordination that goes on. So to what extent does that occur? I'm curious, because if you look at a traditional school where there might be teaching assistants or tutors, you'll often see quite a bit of coordination, some kind of common pacing guide, and a lot of collaboration that kind of goes into it. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more of what does that look like? Because some people have said to me, well, hybrid home, what happens if the teacher teaches a particular thing in one way, and then they come home and the parent teaches the same thing in a totally different way, and this creates contradictions and confusion. So I'm just wondering if you could kind of speak to how this kind of meshing of the teacher at school and the parent, how's all of that work with hybrid homeschooling?
Go first. In the 4-day-a-week model that my kids are currently in, the teacher's working with the students the whole 4 days. And what they're learning during those 4 days, the teacher then uses to craft her homeschool assignments, which in the lower grades would be a one-sheet page, of assignments that they are to do. And those assignments typically, usually almost always, align with what they've learned during the week. So it's reinforcement and practice. We're not, as parents in this particular program, coming up with our own lesson plans. Of course, we can supplement if we'd like. If there are questions that come up, the teachers are all available via Zoom in the morning. They have set office hours, so we can hop on with the kids and ask our questions. The teachers are always available by email, so we can always email them with questions, and then they get back to us rather quickly. Now, when we were enrolled in the 100% homeschool model, where we were then supported by a teacher, that was a little bit different. That's where we had more flexibility, where I had the ability to develop my own curriculum or say, I want to teach this, I want to teach that. But then we were also supported by a credentialed teacher who we would check in with once every learning period. So about once every 4 weeks, we would check in with her. She'd kind of look over our work, make sure we're hitting the standards, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. But she was very acceptable and agreeable to me tailoring the lessons that I felt were important for my kids.
So since we have kind of the opposite model where they're only in school for 1 day a week, there is a lot of time that I spend with the kids, but the teacher has directed kind of like, this is the plan for the year. And in that sense, there's a lot of it that's like an online type model. So they have Chromebooks and they do a lot of their interaction, classroom interaction with the teachers online, as far as not like a live video, but these are the assignments. They can work on them whenever they want to, so it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. It can be whatever days and times work for them. But my job is then to like help them with the learning. So some of my kids are very self-motivated and self-directed. Others need a lot more support. My son, who's now middle school, has pretty severe dyslexia, so I spend a lot of time with him. But I think because I know how they learn best and I know what it looks like when they've mastered something, that I can kind of help with that learning process at home. But you're right, I'm not picking and choosing what's being taught, although I can add above and beyond kind of the core, because they're just truly kind of like, this is the core, these are our graduation requirements, kind of a core. And then again, we can kind of decide how that works best at home and how they want to lay out their day.
Yeah, we have, because we have those lesson plans that the teacher uploads by Saturday evening usually, I will print those out at the beginning of the week, and then I just follow along with the teacher book because I have those at home. I might, if the teacher has her Monday, Wednesday, she does, I forget if I mentioned this, she'll teach the Monday, the corresponding lessons in the teacher book, and then I do them the same lessons on those home days. There is someone else who develops the curriculum for us. We have a curriculum coordinator. I think most of the time, because the parents are there at a classical school, we're looking to see what we have an idea of what the best books are, right? The kids read Dante and Milton in high school, and Little House on the Prairie, and as kids in the second grade or third grade, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and some of these classics. And sometimes if a book doesn't work out, the parents can speak up and say, this particular thing is not working out. Can we can we revise this or take a look at this? And it's a very practical place where people just kind of go, okay, this is common sense. Let's replace this one with something else that's equally good and see how it works. So there's a little bit of a collaboration between parents and the curriculum coordinator in that sense. More than anything, we have the same books, so we're able to follow along at home with what the teacher's doing at school.
All right, let's open it up for questions. Yeah, way in the back.
Thank you guys all for sharing. It's very clear that each child in your family, you found like the perfect fit for them. And yesterday we talked a lot about like how much do these things cost. But also besides just dollars and cents, you guys also spent some social capital, right? Like learning how to play the lottery and then persisting past it even though it didn't work the first time, or finding that really cool hybrid program in your town, or running into people at church, right? Like there was that sort of cost too. So while I'm really excited and happy that you guys found a way to navigate through, I'm thinking about like families that like don't have that part figured out, because that's not really always written so clearly for folks to navigate through. So I'm just curious, like, what advice do you have to us in the field to help educate families to navigate through these systems that, like, honestly are pretty confusing and not always so clear?
I have found that homeschool parents are very good at spreading the word. So I think a lot of stuff is on social media. And I don't know how common it is to have a public school type of a program that's completely free. I do think that's unusual. But if that's something that we can start asking our communities for and our educators for, if there's people within the community that are willing to, school districts that are willing to try to organize something like that, I think that makes it really accessible to everybody. And because it's such a different model, every time they have an opening now, I mean, they started with one teacher, but now every time they have an opening, he has everybody coming to interview, because who doesn't want to work at a different type of a model? So he has teachers coming out of retirement and people that have left teaching that are so excited to come back and teach in a different type of an environment. So I know there's educators out there that are wanting to do that. And I know there's parents that would be willing to be accessible at home some of those other days, especially parents working from home. But I think you're right, trying to spread the word is, I think a lot of that comes through social media, unfortunately, these days.
I was about to say the exact same thing. Like, our school is completely word of mouth. We have a website, but it's like 10 years old, right? And neighbors just tell neighbors. It's probably not the answer that would help people here necessarily, but that's just how our school has been spreading the word.
I agree. Word of mouth, for sure.
All right. Yes, right in the back.
Yeah, I guess my question is in terms of just definitions. If we, why are we defining it hybrid homeschooling as opposed to hybrid public schooling or hybrid charter schooling? And if it ranges from a 1 day a week in school to 4 days a week at home, all the way to 4 days a week in school with teacher uploading curriculum and 1 day at home, is there risk in calling all of that homeschooling such that it ceases to have true meaning as distinct from other options? Not that the options are bad, but is there a benefit to clarifying what we mean by homeschooling, charter schooling, maybe just hybrid schooling as opposed to hybrid homeschooling? Just curious your thoughts on that.
I know my children are considered public school students. And within the homeschool communities, the traditional homeschoolers are not all totally accepting that, like, they would not call us homeschoolers because we are still under that public school umbrella. So I would say my kids are home so much, they kind of they laugh about being homeschool students. They call themselves that, but it's true. Like, we are considered within Tennessee public school students.
Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of a term of art, right? So I'll talk to schools all over the country that look the same, right? And one school will say, well, we meet 2 days a week and all of our kids are registered as homeschoolers, but don't call us homeschoolers, right? We're a school, right? And then another school will say, well, yeah, we go to a campus 2 days a week, but we're definitely homeschoolers, right? And others will say, no, we get it, we're totally a school, but for particular reasons in our state regulations, we can't be called that, so don't call us that. So it's really kind of a term of art. I get a lot of heat from homeschoolers for this exact reason sometime. But then another question I would ask the panelists maybe is, your state may call you a homeschooler. At Sylvia's school, right, even kids in the same building, some are registered as homeschoolers and some are not, right? So there's what the state calls you, and then that kind of what's in your heart too at the same time, right?
Yeah, I can just want to just state in California, so you can homeschool. Like I was saying, we did the 100% homeschool and we were supported by a teacher. Now I would consider that 100% homeschool. However, maybe not under California law, because if you are homeschooling under a charter school, you don't have to file this PSA with the state, which is your private homeschool affidavit, which needs to be filed. If you're not under a charter school, you're required in California to file that. So I think in California, especially that's all I can speak to in my experience, is this wide range of, we have such a huge variety of homeschoolers. I have friends who, she coordinates these huge trips for her family, and she's trying so hard to find this community for her kids where she wants consistency with other families, but maybe she's not economically to the point where she's able to do these enrichment centers, because these enrichment centers are costing, I don't even know, like $6,000 a year just to go and take a few classes. But this particular friend of mine is someone who doesn't have the option to send her kids to a public school due to vaccines, frankly. So I think there's just it's just a huge term, homeschoolers.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up on the last question. When we need to name things, it's mostly because we want to gather data, control it, or some other motivation. What we're really talking about here is who is really in control of the child's education, who will be held accountable if that child fails. And we've had the same experience. We've moved our children from public school to private school, back to public school, homeschooled. We did all of those things, but we were in charge. I was in the military, and Admiral Rickover used to say when he walked in the room and asked who was in charge, if no one or everyone raised their hand, no one was in charge. So I think that's the discussion, parental rights. And in Virginia, we're very lucky to have a parental rights law that says that it is a fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing, well-being, and education of that child. And for that reason, not public money, taxpayer money should be directed to follow the child and address a whole range of these situations. So I'd like to hear where you're on, where you all stand on parental rights and what I just said.
I would agree with that by saying that, ultimately I see myself as being in charge of everybody, K through 12. K through 8th for sure, because I'm registered with the state as a homeschooler, even though I am, in a sense, letting someone else drive some of that train, especially since I have a large number of kids and at varying ages. So I have someone who, and this is part of your question too, where I have someone else that's helping me drive that train. But ultimately, I'm still in charge of that train. And even in high school, I see that they're doing well. I see that their test scores are good, they're doing well. And so I put them in this system that is this technically an accredited private school, even though it's more university model, where they are in school those 3 days. As far as the state is concerned, they're in school all 5 days. I don't know that they know the difference, really. But they do have those 2 days at home where they're very self-directed and need to have the responsibility and self-control to be able to spend their day wisely. But ultimately, I see myself as being in charge. So,
I think that yes, I'm still kind of held. The public school system is held accountable for my kids, and they do have to do state testing through Samuel Everett. But they. And so I had to make that choice. And I do have, one of my middle schoolers is still just a homeschooler that's registered as a homeschooler through the state, who I get to choose all of her classes and direct all of her schoolwork, and we're part of a co-op. But once I chose Samuel Everett for my other kids, I had to at least complete what they were sending home with my kids. Now, for a lot of my kids, it didn't take up all their time, honestly, because this is public school curriculum in Tennessee. And so we've been able to, even my high schoolers have chosen to take public speaking classes and car mechanics classes on top of that, even without getting credit for them. But yeah, I had to make that decision of, okay, ultimately, I have to complete what's assigned through Samuel Everett first before I can add to that. And they are held accountable by the state and have to do that testing. But I chose to do that as my kids, especially the ones reaching high school, because just as a traditional homeschooler, to find Spanish teachers and calculus teachers and chemistry teachers, you end up to find these great teachers. You can do it, but you're going to pay for those classes. And when you multiply that times 5 kids, or right now have 3 in high school, it gets really expensive. So I chose the public school umbrella for that, just because it was free, and then I could use my money to add to that as needed.
Yeah, I was just going to agree that under the charter school, the charter is responsible for the education, making sure that we've hit all the boxes. So yes.
Yes.
I'm struck by how important either explicitly or implicitly character formation is. Whether it's in a religious context, Sylvia, as you've described, this morning's keynote speaker talked about a more secular or a secular context for character formation. And if I were in the casino, I'd place a very large wager on our world being more and more shaped by algorithms rather than less frequently shaped by algorithms. And character depends on the ability to make intentional, thoughtful choices. When so much of the choice architecture is controlled by algorithms, things that are largely invisible to us, I'm curious if you all are thinking, and if you are, how you're thinking about how to educate kids for character, for virtue, in a world that's probably increasingly dominated by algorithms, and that challenge the ability, I think, for all of us, but especially for young people who are very much in their most formational moments, to make those character-based choices.
I think because I get to have my kids home with me 4 days a week, and they're gone to school at different days. They're not all home the same 4 days. But that just gives me a lot of time with them, which I realize is very valuable. And so I still can, I think it's on my husband and I to spend, the time imparting values. We, on different days of the week, like I'm reading a novel with my older kids on Mondays while my kindergartner's gone. We're reading through The Cross and the Switchblade right now. On Tuesdays, we're reading through logical fallacies together and discussing, debating different things. On Wednesdays, we're doing some art projects. On Thursdays, we're doing survival medicine. And so I think the fact that I have that time with them is what's so valuable. Yes, do I think the math model that they're getting through this public school is the best? Maybe not, but to me, that time, like you said, is more valuable than maybe what Common Core math they might be getting. And so that has become, that's what I chose as the most valuable, is getting to have them home 4 days a week. And even my now graduating senior, if I didn't have those hours with her, I would not see her. They're very busy. They play, varsity sports, and they're involved in community theater and church and volunteer work. So I think that you're right. We value that, and so, but it's kind of on us to impart those values to them. But I get the chance to do that during the day.
What we're finding is that on the experience of just sometimes some of our own childhoods, and you see people and family members, and if whatever you teach at home, whatever your values are, if they're not reflected in your school, you're kind of screwed, because at a certain point, your kids are going to look to, parents are always the ultimate, I think even statistically, and they've done studies about this, that parents always have the most influence on kids, but at a certain point, other kids start to have influence on your kids. And so it's just a conscious decision that's been made to make sure that you're around other families that have your values. And we call it the Bosco bubble, because it's St. John Bosco. And the kids are like, you guys are in a bubble. This is just a bubble. Well, a bubble is nothing more than a community of people that are striving to kind of be the same. And not striving to be the same, because they're very different from one another. If anything, we have people from all over the world in this community. We've got Lebanon and Peru and Colombia and Mexico and Cuba and Spain, and we're Portugal and Philippines. If not the kids, then the parents, and sometimes the grandparents too. But you mentioned a good point about technology. It's actually not unusual for our kids to come into high school and not have phones. Like half of the freshman class does not have a phone. And I can't do that if I send my kid to a public school, because the social pressure on me and on them is just huge. So the kids get to school, and it's nothing fancy. I think they've updated it this year, but last year it was, you know, those shoe racks that you put over the door? They were labeled with your name, and you put your phone in the shoe rack at the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day, you went there and you picked it up. I mean, it was a very simple kind of, and nobody stole it because this is a small place, you know, that is not going to work everywhere. But we're have this conscious effort to not have our daughters on social media, and I actually brought a number of statements that the kids made because I have a class that I teach there. It's just twice a week for an hour a day, and I asked the kids. I said, you know, in the beginning of the year, you send out this form that it's the getting to know you form. You know, what are your top 5 favorite movies, that kind of thing. And so I said, in what way are you unlike people your age? And the answers I got were, I don't watch YouTube. I got my license 6 months after turning 16. I'm very knowledgeable about faith, sports, and the outdoors. I'm sure there are plenty of public school kids that have that too, but I liked that one. I have no social anxiety. I have no interest in social media. And these kids they exist in range of nerdiness and coolness as they do everywhere else, you know, but they are, it's just one has reinforced the other, you know, home and school, so.
All right, I think we are actually out of time here, but big thanks to our parent panel. I like that I have no interest in social media. That's fantastic. Great job. Thank you.